Starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Super Black Reads. So tired. We are your hosts, Carl and Dan. I'm Carl. That's Dan. What's up, Dan?
How you doing, Carl? You sound tired.
I am tired, but I am excited for Skyward Volume 1. Let's kick things off with a little explanation on the book, and then we'll dive right in. Does that sound good, Dan?
Sounds good to me.
One day, gravity on Earth suddenly became a fraction of what it is now. 20 years later, humanity has adapted to its new low-gravity reality. And to Willa Fowler, a woman born just after G-Day, it's, well, pretty awesome, actually. You can fly through the air. I mean, sure, you can also die if you jump too high, so just don't jump too high. And maybe don't stumble into a dangerous plan to bring gravity back that could get you killed. From writer Joe Henderson, showrunner of Fox's Lucifer, and artist Lee Garbett, Skyward is an adventure-filled exploration of our world turned upside down and a young woman's journey to find her place in it. Dan, how did you like Skyward Volume 1?
This was a very fun read for me. I purposely went into this book not going through the synopsis, not trying to figure out what this is all about. So all I had to go by was your title that you gave me and the cover image, and I just kind of took off from there. And yet again, this Image is very good at putting out these really fun titles, and it was a really fun and quick read.
Yeah, it was. I agree. I read it a while ago, but I always remember kind of the crux of the book, and I was like, that was a really good book. And once we started kind of focusing down on actual books with black leads, I was like, Skyward, just off the bat. I found myself really, connecting with Nate Fowler, the father.
Yes, yeah. Ooh, that's right.
Yeah, his kind of journey doesn't mimic my own as a father, but I felt like I kind of looked like the dude. I felt like we had similar outlooks on life. And
Don't say no. You can't gloss over it. We have to touch upon this as much as possible, because I didn't realize it when I was reading the book, but as soon as he says yes, this makes all the sense in the world. So your wife didn't die and you weren't left with a baby where gravity disappeared, but at the same time, it's if anybody knows Carl enjoys the indoors.
So much.
So much.
So much.
So much. And has a very, very dim view of the outside world in general. So, looking at this, oh, wait, yes, this is, yeah, I could see why you gravitate towards this book.
go back and just take, Dan, I suggest you do this, and anyone listening, if you read it, just go back and look at all the parts with Nate, and I can place myself in that scenario, and I would think exactly the way he does. At some point, he doesn't want to leave the house. I hate leaving the house. There's a scene of him legit working out at home, which is all I ever do. I don't pay for gym memberships.
Yep.
His hair is kind of like mine. We
have to say, when we post this, you have to put a screen grab of Nate and yourself, just to kind of prove that point. Because I'm looking at that page right now. If anybody is paying attention, page 26 on the digital readers, that is Carl.
I'll take you one step forward. My Instagram picture is Nate Fowler, and it has been for maybe a year and change.
That is right. How did I not put this together?
I don't know.
Oh, I feel like an idiot now. I'm going back to Instagram as we speak, and I'm like, oh, okay, no, yeah, it is nice. You stuck that one by me, Carl. Not bad.
Yeah. Was there anyone in the book that you found yourself connecting with on any level?
No. It's not really. It's I just enjoyed the whole feel, the high concept of all of a sudden gravity disappearing wrote me in general, and seeing the world they built they're in the process of building around this concept. Like when we were introduced to a storm, like what a storm looks like in a world with no gravity, is like, oh my god, this is terrifying, right? It makes all the sense in the world. So like I'm curious to see as the world grows even more, like all these different concepts, like all these different outcomes because there's no gravity, and seeing how classism doesn't disappear in a world like this.
Ooh, let's talk about the classism and the inverse of how it's represented, where normally high class people are on like the upper, in penthouses and such. It's been flipped. So now the lower class is super high up in the air and the lower class are down on the ground.
Well, okay, so let's back up a little bit, because for anybody that has been reading along or the people that have not, Willa Fowler is the main character. Then we have Edison, who is it seems to be her crush, her manager, but also seems to be her crush, but hasn't really been requited just yet. Mm-hmm. So apparently Edison is rich. He comes from a very, very rich family. Stinking rich. And they all live, well, Edison and his family, of course, live on the ground because they could afford to, in a world where you have to pay for magnetic shoes to keep you on the floor, like all this different stuff. And in his family portrait, Edison, who has no legs below his knees, is forced to be in a wheelchair for the family picture because they're so obsessed with keeping the status quo that they feel it's best that he stays in a wheelchair, because once they get, being rich means you're on the floor. It means gravity still exists for you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, gravity is like gold. Gravity is the money. Gravity is the status. If you're able to walk on solid ground, that is status, versus just kind of floating around in the air. I did like the fact that Edison took to the sky. Like he was like, he doesn't have legs, like you mentioned, and he said, it makes more sense for him to be up in the sky. Basically, he's like, because there's nothing I can do down there. Like I can't walk, but up here I'm as capable as anybody else because my legs don't matter.
And say who won that life. So it's very, very interesting, that little backstory, and at the same time understanding that Willa's father has so much to do with what happened. Like we don't know in this volume exactly what he did to get everybody to where they are now in terms of the gravity just disappearing, but like being introduced in the first few pages of this book to his story of what happened, why he is the way he is, the fact that he lost his wife when she was jogging outside, and and the terrifying concept of there are now corpses and junk just floating around in outer space around the planet because nobody knows how to probably deal with that anymore, is crazy. It was so crazy. Like that page, that spread where you just saw corpses, cows, you name it, just spinning around the earth, just frozen for all eternity. Is like, man, that is crazy. That's so messed up.
Yeah, what a terrifying prospect to just float away and people just had nothing to latch on to. And the fact that Nate had to, he wanted to grab his wife, but then he realized he has a baby in there that he has to take care of now. What did you think of the time jump, the kind of drastic 20-year time jump in the beginning?
I was okay with that because I felt as if you need to understand the world, and there isn't really an easy way to introduce the main character and tell her story. Seeing as it's like I don't want to see the story of her growing up in that world. I want to see the story of her being in that world and being very used to it, like nothing else existed. Like nothing else existed before the time without gravity.
Yeah, you just want to get to the story. There's no struggle for her, and I think I'm with you. I think they did a wonderful job of establishing her character as the baby, where the baby's face is so joyful and happy that it's floating. You get it.
Mhm.
And then the hard cut to 20 years later, where she's joyful in the sky, like you understand. So
Mhm.
then you get to have the fun of discovering how the writers have kind of crafted this world around how do you deal with low gravity, right? So like you spoke about the storm, which is like this weird, terrifying floating ocean in the middle of the sky that if you get caught in it, you can drown. You can literally drown from the rain in the middle of the
Yeah.
sky. That's
If,
crazy.
if anybody out there is having difficulty understanding the concept, just think of like astronauts in outer space where they're trying to drink water and it comes out as like like little balls or globulets,
Yep.
and they have to drink it that way. So imagine a storm 1,000 times larger than that, and to the point like there's literally fishes swimming around in there. It's its own traveling ocean. That's what it is. And
That's exactly
everybody,
what it is.
what like yeah, when a storm is coming, everybody knows they have to stay inside or they're going to drown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying.
Let's talk about the bad guy of the story, Mr. Roger Barrow, the
Mhm.
the rich man who is connected to Nate Fowler, because apparently they work together, and he apparently knows that Nate can fix the gravity thing, but Roger has profited from, whether it be the magnet boots or whatever he did in the 20 years that since it's happened. He's now accustomed to this life, and anyone who's going to kind of mess with his cushy job, as it were, is going to get eliminated. So our hero, Willa, kind of gets her dad in trouble, which again, I relate to Nate.
Mhm. It's a fun concept, but this is part of the story that like I expect it to happen, where the protagonist ultimately is the demise of her father. Like it was weird reading this and understanding, like as much as I enjoyed the story, understanding where this story had to go in order for the main character to grow, her father's going to have to die in some way. And it was weird reading this comic book, understanding that was going to happen before I even realized it was going to happen. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get that. They're like my thing was the protagonist being so directly connected to the story's antagonist to the point where they're like 2 degrees away from each other.
And I guess this is where like TV writing and all that different stuff comes into play, because in a television show, in a screenplay, like things tend to be very, very compact and very concise, and it's like because you don't necessarily have the time to have the world grow, so it only makes sense to have these characters so closely connected. So it was a little off-putting when I was reading it, but at the same time, I accepted it because once again, the overall story was solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Let's switch gears. Start talking about some art.
Mm-hmm.
We love art.
Yes, sir.
What did you think of the overall art direction of this book?
I totally enjoyed the art. Very, very beautifully done. He not suffers. Wow, that's a very bad way to put it. He reminded me of a lot of the Kuberts, where all these characters are drawn to be superheroes, like very, very superhero-like. And I'm the type of artist that like I want to see different looking people throughout the entire book. Like when you're creating a world, like everybody was pretty, like even down to her father who spent 2 decades indoors, who hasn't got any real sunlight, who is in marvelous shape, right? And he looks like a zaddy. Wonderful shape. The protagonist is long, lengthy, like almost model-esque.
She's definitely a model. She has very defined features, very symmetrical face.
But here's the thing, like as I'm saying this out loud now, and this is going to sound very, very strange to anybody that doesn't know this, but like you have the book / the television show called The Expanse, which is beautiful hard sci-fi space opera to the point where they go out of their way to get into the nitty-gritty science of it all, on how these characters exist and what would happen to a body if it exists in zero G for an extended amount of time. And looking at it now, looking at the main character, like, oh no, this makes a little more sense, because there are characters in The Expanse who are humanoid, who are descendants of humans that live on the outer belts of Saturn, and because they don't live in the same gravity that we do, their bones are lighter, and they're just longer, ganglier humanoid people, right? So I guess so I take back what I said. Understanding probably the science it's trying to go by, it makes sense why we should look why the main character would look the way she does. So I take that back. So altogether, really well penciled. In the very beginning, for me at least, the storytelling seemed a little off in a couple of panels, but only 1 or 2 pages where I had to go back a couple of times to take a look at it. But other than that, I refer you back to the spread where the Earth is just being encompassed by everybody that was pulled off into outer space when G-Day happened. It's fun, it's beautiful, it's very, very light. But when you take the time and go back through it, you can tell you can really appreciate the detail in this book. It's beautiful. It really is.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think the color work is really well done. I think the tones that they use they're very distinct. They're very saturated panels, lots of nice shadows, lots of beautifully rendered panels with very warm color tones. It's just really beautiful. We've gotten lucky. The last couple books that we've read have had some really good art.
Mm-hmm. It's nothing is overwhelming. The inks are clean. The characters are clean. There's in a lot of the pages, the depth is very well rendered. There's so much I can talk about with this and kind of get lost in all these different spreads. But you had it on point where they were able to pick the right color palettes through each page to convey the mood properly. And the artist's technical ability is amazing. Is really on point.
Let's close it out with a chat about Willa herself. What did you think of Willa Fowler as a protagonist, as a black lead, as a strong black female lead? What did you think of her kind of her character arc and her personality? Did it resonate?
I loved her a lot as a character, but the question we keep asking ourselves, we've asked ourselves in the past few episodes already, is that did it make a difference, that this character is black? And my answer to that is no. It's one of those refreshing times. No. Let me back that up. I'm happy to see that this character was made a minority character, but you don't have to tell that particular story. She is who she is. She's not bogged down. She's not bogged down by stereotypes. She's literally not bogged down at all.
By anything.
By anything. And she's able to be what she is. And I'm curious to see, now that she no longer has a father, what type of character she's going to evolve into.
Yeah. I want to touch on that. That hit me the hardest when I read that the first time, when she's about to float away and there's a panel that just says, "I got you." And then it's literally like a Superman picture of him holding his daughter with the sun shining behind him. I'm as I'm saying this, I'm going back to kind of read that panel. She's about to die, and it's just a white panel. It says, "I've got you." And the next is, she says, "Dad," and he's holding her like Superman was holding Lois Lane or something. And he's like, he saved his kid. And he says, "You're going to be great," and just pushes her back to Earth and then floats away. And I was like, man, could I do that? Could I be could I be that guy, or would I just be like, well, I just lost a daughter, she just floated away?
No, look at it this way. It's the father's character arc is very short, very concise, but it's very, very poignant, because in the very beginning, he even says in the book itself, like, he was confronted with the fact that his wife was floating off into space and he couldn't save her. And he has played with the idea for decades that, yes, he made the excuse to run back and save his daughter, but his daughter was safe. She's in a room floating around with all the windows closed. Right? So he made that decision to retreat back to the house and let his wife float away. We can make the argument that he couldn't save her anyway, because if he grabbed her, where are they going? They're not going anywhere. Like, they're going to die together. So he had to save himself to make sure his daughter survives. And once again, in order to make sure his daughter survives, he has to make a sacrifice. Yeah. It just so happens this sacrifice this time around is himself. So it makes sense. There's like that story arc for that character makes the utmost sense for me. Like, it's heartbreaking, and I could almost swore you about to start tearing up on your end over there, because you sound a little verklempt.
I'm all right. I'm good.
But
everything's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I see what. Once I saw that happening, I think that's where my brain locked in. It's like, oh, he's going to die. Like, as soon as that decision was made, it's like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. I just wanted it to have to happen, but it made all the sense in the world. Like, I couldn't see the story being written any other way, because you need that gut punch. Like, every story needs that gut punch.
She needs a reason. She needs a reason to keep going.
Exactly.
She's the protagonist. He is there to, again, move the story forward. Especially as a father figure, he has to be there to give her a reason to go on, whether it be, some inspirational speech, which he doesn't give in the beginning, because he's, like you said, he was kind of a coward. He was locked in his house. He was not participating in the world. He shunned himself. He had to do something to get her story moving, and that was, one, saving her, being a dad and saving his daughter, and then two, giving up his life for his kid. It's the second time he went to save her. The first time was, granted, he's just like, sure, she's locked in the room, but even if they floated away, what happens if he doesn't go back for her? She's just a baby floating in a house at that point. Yep. So yeah, he was always thinking of her and keeping her safe. And like, again, when I read that, I was like, it hit me to the point where I was like, I would have floated away. I would have went up there and grabbed my baby and pushed her back to earth and been like, you are going to be the better version of me, which is like the whole parental thing. Like, do better than I did. And he saw in her the potential to do that. So yeah, that whole end part resonated with me quite strongly. And,
but I'm gonna throw this out there real quick, and you touched about it very quickly as well. She is pretty much the maker of his demise.
Yeah, it's her fault.
Yeah, it is so weird that, like, I've read so many stories, and I guess you can't get around it, that the protagonist ends up being the demise of the people that he actually loves, and it's a matter, well, he or she actually loves, and it's her or his responsibility to kind of bring themselves back up. Like, I was watching Avatar the other day for the first time since it came out. And I remember watching that movie and trying to understand why the protagonist is a protagonist, because ultimately he's the reason that this is all happening. That all these aliens, cat people are dying. This book isn't nearly as bad, isn't nearly as blatant, but like it's an interesting little trope that I've, like, with all the writing I've been doing, with all the reading I've been doing, like, this comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the point I can't even get around it when I'm writing. Like, I'm sitting there like, oh, this is Lion King all over again. It's like, son of a bitch. How do I get around this?
There's only so many stories you can tell. You just got to be, you got to throw your hat in the ring, right? What's your take on that story? So just write it, man. Just write it down. And, that they got around that by their story they're telling is about a world with, you know, less gravity. That's unique. But the crux of the story is a very common thing. You know, it's a girl or a child who feels trapped, and they get an opportunity to break free, and there are consequences. It's the same story. There are consequences to every action you want to take. So, and the parents pay for it. This is the Lion King story. It's like Nate is Mufasa. Yeah, Nate is Mufasa. He gets trampled. Overall, I think I like the book. I think it's worth reading through. There's 3 volumes. I think it's worth reading through all 3 of them. I like Willa. I think she was a strong character. She had human flaws. She had human quirks. She had needs. She had wants, which was always refreshing. And yeah, it's nice to see a strong Black female lead. Like, I can give this book to my daughter when she's old enough to understand it and say, you know, have at it. You have representation in a book.
Yeah, so overall, like, we both wholeheartedly recommend this book for anybody who wants to read. But at the same time, we don't have to say, because I'm pretty sure this is an Eisner nominated book.
It's been said before.
Yes.
We aren't the first person to say it. The first people to say it. Awesome. I think that's it for us, man. Dan, where can they find you on socials?
You can find me on Instagram at _basement_monster. You can find my website at thebasementmonster.com. You can find me on Twitter at Twitter.
Why don't you just stop promoting Twitter? I feel like you always bring it up and you're just like, ugh.
This is my running joke, all right? This is my running gag.
All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, but you can find me on Twitter at Dan_D_monster. Like, I literally have to pull up my Twitter page.
You don't even know it.
But it's like,
you don't even know it.
If you want to subscribe to a page that never ever gets updated, go. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Have fun. Have at it.
I hope people just subscribe just to spite you, just so you have to go up there and do something with it. Like, yeah, we're gonna subscribe. You better say something. Say anything.
Maybe, but maybe not. Yeah. More likely not.
Hopefully. Check us out on superblack.co for more podcasts. Our first season is up, so go check that out. We're on Spotify and iTunes. Just search for _Black. On Twitter and Instagram, superblack.org. We are on Twitch, Superblack Plays. Go there and watch us play games with Black lead characters. That's it, people. Thanks for listening. We'll check you next week with a whole new book.
See you later, guys.
Full stop.